Thank you, thank you. Members of the head table, Deputy Political Leader, Legislative, Mr. Fitzgerald Hines, Member of Parliament for Laventille West, Minister in the Ministry of the Attorney General, my cabinet colleague, Dr. Nayan Gadsby Dolly, Minister of Culture, Minister of Community Development and the Arts. My other cabinet colleague, Mr. Kazim Hussain, Minister of Rural Development and Local Government, Chairman of the San Juan Laventille Corporation, Mr. Roberts, our Public Relations Officer, Mrs. Laura Lizama Lee Singh, other members of Parliament, ministers, Minister Kojo, I saw Minister Gopi School a little while ago, MP for Tunapuna, on board with Ford, MP for Laventille East Morva, Sir John Leons, other members of Parliament, other mayors and chairmen, other members of local government. The Vice President of the Senate, to our right, the Tobagonian, other distinguished guests, other executive members of the movement, the media, ladies and gentlemen. Our political leader, our esteemed political leader, as you may know, is down with a bit of the flu. He's recovering well, and it is my honor and privilege to deputize tonight to close this meeting. And I'm going to deal with some matters that have been in the public domain recently. Let me start with the first one. There's a fella called Watson Duke. You know that fella? I was sent a video where he was complaining about a press release that was sent out by our public relations officer, Laura Lizama Lee Singh, where she condemned him for his racial slurs and pointed out how much we had done to deal and assist public servants. Mr. Duke didn't like the press release. So he went on Facebook and said that Ms. Lizama Lee Singh was not speaking the truth. And the thing that bothered him the most, because you see, they don't want to admit this. When we came in 2015, it wasn't easy at all. You have heard one of the speakers, Dr. Dolly, talk about the fact that when I was made Minister of Finance, within a couple of days, I got a visit from the former governor of the central bank, looked at me and said, in 3 days, I'm going to turn off the tap. I want to know what he's talking about. I didn't know he was working in Wassa. Ask him, what tap you talking about? He said, the money tap. I said, money tap? He said, yes. You have enough money to run this country for 3 days. After that, I will turn off the tap. That is what the UNC gifted to us. A bankrupt treasury and enough money to pay our bills for 3 days. We had to run quick and borrow $1 billion within the first week of coming into government. Run quick, just to keep us afloat. And with all those problems that we had, after they took our bank balance at the central bank, because the government has its current account at the central bank, and all the money the government collects goes into something called the consolidated fund that is kept at the central bank. And that is where we issue releases, we give authority to ministries to write checks, to pay salaries, etc. And with all the problems we had, because when the UNC came in May 2010, the bank balance, the government's bank balance in the central bank was in credit. That is what we gave to them. Bank balance had $6 billion in it in credit. That's what they inherited from us. They spent out a whole $6 billion, and they spent the next $9 billion and put us $9 billion into overdraft. So between 2010 and 2015, our balance in the current account in the central bank, government account, went from plus 6 billion to minus $9 billion. That is the gift they give to us. And the overdraft limit is a percentage of annual revenue. And annual revenue is about 60 billion. Percentage at that time was 15%. So your overdraft limit was 9 billion. They carry us right up to about minus 8.8 billion, $8.9 billion. That is what I found when I went into the Ministry of Finance September 11, 2015. So they blow $15 billion. Next thing they do, the National Gas Corporation was making money all the time. It was one of the most profitable state enterprises. It had $14 billion in the bank. Spent out all, the whole $14 billion. And in that $14 billion, they take $1 billion and waste it on a beaten wastewater plant that cannot be used, could never be used. The project was a waste of time from the beginning. And they went into it knowing, and they gave the project to the highest bidder. They had a bidder bidding $400 million less. They decided they're not giving it to that bidder. They gave it to the highest bidder, $1 billion for a wastewater treatment plant that could never work because the water was to go from Beetham to Point Lisas, and they had to run a pipeline, and there was no way to pass the pipeline. You couldn't go through the swamp because you had to get environmental clearance, and they never get that. You couldn't go down the Churchill Roosevelt Highway because you have traffic night and day. That project could never work. They knew. $1 billion. And as soon as we came into government, the contractor bust it and run to Panama. That is the legacy of the UN. That's what they gift us, okay? And that is why I have to talk to Mr. Duke now. He's stooping his ears talk. Let me tell you about all those problems we face. They spend out $15 billion from the bank account. They take $14 billion from the National Gas Company. That's almost $30 billion they waste. Waste on things like life, sport, where they blow $400 million. This is what your government did. Because this is all about getting it done. And we're going to talk about what we have done. Mr. Duke vexed because Laurel spoke about the amount of back pay we paid. Well, I went and I get the actual figures I have here. Back pay from 2015 to 2019. And I will give you the big ones. In the Tobago House of Assembly, $147 million in back pay. And that's what we spend. The Tobago House of Assembly spend the next $100 million in back pay. In the Ministry of National Security, the fire services get $402,310,000 in back pay. The prison service get $256,070,000 in back pay. The regiment get $343,320,000. The Coast Guard, $171,190,000. The Air Guard, $43,450,000. Ministry of Health, Regional Health Authority workers, we give them $1,188,450,000 in back pay. Ministry of Labor, workers, they get $83 million. In WASA, they get $432 million in back pay. The other workers in the Ministry of Public Utilities get $24 million. In local government, $60 million in back pay. Ministry of Works, $75 million in back pay. Ministry of Trade, $31 million in back pay. Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, $812 million in back pay. Ministry of Works, again, $65 million in back pay. Planning and Development, $29 million in back pay. Ministry of Social Development, $20 million in back pay. I'll just give you some of the big ones. You know what's the total? $5,102,112,000 Just that what I add up. And this is not all. It's just part. Because we also gave TSTT workers $300 million in back pay. And there's more. So when you add it all up, you get very close to the figure of $6 billion, which Laura Lizama Leasing put in the press release that Mr. Duke so vexed about. And he called for the figures. Well, here are the figures. I just called them out on national television. Duke, you are a disgrace. You are a UNC agent. That's what you are. You are a UNC agent. And ladies and gentlemen, just ignore them and their nonsense. There are people in this country, the media in this country, for some reason, they love mediocrity. They love mediocrity. They have two fellas always talking about PNM and the economy. Two fellas. Both of them was junior ministers. None of them was ever Minister of Finance. Junior ministers. The media does get mixed up and say former Minister of Finance, this one, and former Minister of Finance, that one. They were never a Minister of Finance. But let me tell you about one of them. In 11th of March 2008, let me tell you about this fella claim to fame. Mariano Brown, minister in the Ministry of Finance, yesterday told Newsday he authorized $400 million into a Caribbean Airlines account for the purchase of an executive jet. That's his claim to fame. He wanted to spend $400 million on a plane. Let me give you another thing. You remember the Summit of Americas? Remember that? September the 29th, 2009, Guardian. Government spent US $18 million on chartering two cruise ships, the Carnival Victory and the Caribbean Princess, for the Summit of the Americas. Trade Minister Mariano Brown confirmed yesterday. That's $110 million. So that is how he has run economy. Spend $100 million to charter two cruise ships for people to have a good time, and spend $400 million on an executive jet. And the next one, his claim to fame is $30 million on dog rice. You know what I'm talking about? Somehow, them two fellas, the media spend all the time asking them about what's going on in the economy. But let me tell you something. I just read out that we spent over $5 billion on back pay. And that's just one of the things we did. When we came into this country, this government, it wasn't easy, you know. You may have heard other speakers talk about the problems we faced. In 2014, the income that the government received from oil and gas was $28 billion. In 2016, when we came in, the income we received from oil and gas was $8 billion. Our income dropped by $20 billion from 28 to 8. And yet we still pay out in that period over $5 billion in back pay. You know why? Because we are PNM. Because we make good on our promises. We are PNM. It wasn't easy. You think it was easy? You lose $20 billion from your revenue. 20, you know, not 2, you know, 20. And you still pay out over $5 billion in back pay. That was not easy. Okay? And we have spent the first 3 years of our government stabilizing the economy. We had to reduce expenditure. We had to take it down from 60 billion to 50 billion. We just couldn't afford. In 2016, national revenue dropped to $36 billion from 54. Them fellas had it nice, you know. Oil price was $100 a barrel when UNC was in power. It dropped to $26 a barrel in 2016, from 100 to 26. That's what we had to deal with. We still were able to pay out $5 billion in back pay. So we spent the first 3 years stabilizing. We asked you to be patient with us. We asked you to bear with us. And you have. You have shown tremendous patience and tremendous reliance, the population of Trinidad and Tobago. And that is why in this budget, this 2019-2020 budget, we have decided to give back. Enough belt-tightening, time to give back. And that is why, and you see, they don't want us to talk about this budget. They don't like it. I'll tell you something. When I go in the supermarket, on the gas station, and employees come up to me and say, thanks to the PNM government for increasing the minimum wage from $15 to $17.50, I feel good. I feel proud to be part of the PNM government that decided to do that, as difficult as it is. And people saying there's no money, that is nonsense. That will increase the take-home pay of a minimum wage worker by some $400. That is not small change, you know. For somebody at minimum wage, $400 is a lot of money, and they are grateful. And the CPEP workers are grateful that we're increasing their wages by 15%. And the URP workers are grateful that we decide to increase their wages by 15%. And the OJT trainees are grateful that we're increasing their wages by 10%. And we're increasing the numbers from 5,000 to 8,000. So 3,000 additional young people will now be able to work for 2 years in the on-the-job training program, because we, the PNM, have decided to give back. We decided it's time to give back to the population, and this is what we have done. One of the things we're going to do this year, you know, any of you who are on pension, anybody who has to receive a government pension, which means you're 60 and over, up to now, every 6 months, you had to go by the Treasury and you had to produce something called a life certificate to prove that you're alive. We are abolishing that. And you know how we could do that? Because of the hard work. We are a team, you know. The hard work of our ministers in the Attorney General's office, Minister Alwari, Minister Hines. You know what we're doing now? We're integrating the database, the computer database of births and deaths with the computer database of people on pension. So once a person is deceased, their name will immediately come off the pension register. That's what this PNM is doing. So no longer will these elderly people, some of them quite sick, have to go and present themselves with this life certificate to prove that they are alive. That's what we doing. That's what PNM doing. And we're going to, after we get it finished for public servants, we're going to do it for old age pensioners. You're talking about over 100,000 people will no longer have to present a life certificate. And we started it already. In the Ministry of Finance, already 20,000 people no longer have to present life certificates. We've started the process already as your government working for you, getting it done. Immigration and Customs form. This long, long, long form. When you're coming in the PRCO, you had to fill out this long form. You had to say where you went, how much days you was away, who you stay by. That done. You see, in this year, 2019, 2020, we're coming just like America. When you come in PRCO, no more immigration and custom form. And you know how we can do it? Using machine-readable passports. That is the technology. So they will just scan your passport. They will know who you are. They don't have to ask you any question. And that is it. Your PNM government getting it done. You see, they don't want to talk about that. Afraid to talk about that. Cooperative societies. You know how long credit unions want to offer banking services to their members? Must be about 30 years. And every government after government say they go do it. Well, we're doing it this year. This year. We have had discussions. We had a team. I told you we are a group. We are not individuals. We had a group of ministers, met with the credit union movement, and they have agreed that a new credit union authority will be created to deal with those credit unions that want to offer banking services. And as soon as that is created, The credit unions, you'll be able to cash checks, you'll be able to send your money directly from your salary to the credit unions and so on. We're doing that for the little people, for the small people's organizations. And one of the things we're doing right away, right now, if you have a joint account in a credit union and the other party passes away and dies, all you could get is $5,000. We're increasing that to $50,000. That's what this PNM government doing. Yes, the beneficiary, $50,000. The nominated beneficiary. Correct. So Heinz, thank you for that correction. Daily paid public servants. They had a government before us. They say they were a trade union government. Old talk. Within a couple of years, the first thing, the trade union party, the MSJ, busted from that government and said they can't handle the corruption. They're gone. They spent 5 years and 3 months. The head of the National Federated Government Workers Union, NUGFW, National Union of Government and Federated Workers, was the vice president of the Senate under the UNC. 5 years and 3 months. And they couldn't give daily paid workers a pension. One set of talk. Oil at $100 a barrel. $14 billion come out of the NGC. $15 billion come out of the bank account, the government bank account. With all that, they couldn't give daily paid workers a pension. This PNM giving daily paid workers a pension. Getting it done. Agriculture. Agriculture has some of the most incentives in the world in Trinidad and Tobago. But still, it is difficult to encourage people to do agriculture. So we decided we will make agriculture a tax-free industry. Once you're in agriculture, no tax on anything, on equipment, on vehicles, on profits, nothing. Tax-free. That coming this year for agriculture. Housing. One of the biggest problems for a member of parliament, all members of parliament, when they go to their constituency office to see the public, as a man come in your office, I want a house. And Mr. Leons, I want a house. And Mr. Hines, I want a house. Because there are over 100,000 people, we say over 100,000, on the list for housing. We can't build 100,000 houses. It's impossible. So we have to encourage people to approach this thing in a different way. Long ago, 25, 30 years ago, people would build their own houses. They wouldn't depend on the government to do it. So what we decided to do, we know that you can build for yourself. If you're building it for yourself, you could build what they call a starter home, a 2-bedroom house, for less than $300,000. I know. The people in my constituency can do it for less than $300,000. In fact, we have a program called Village Improvement through the Ministry of Housing, through the Land Settlement Agency. Just the other day, they gave out some houses up in Rampanalgas, up in the Toco Grande area. That was the Village Improvement, where you get a contractor, you give him $120,000. The villagers come together and put in some labor, and you build a house, if you see these nice houses, just for over $120,000. So we have decided we are going to make very, very, very low interest loans guaranteed by the government available to anybody that has a piece of land. You want to build a house, come to the government, and we'll give you a loan for $300,000. You go ahead and build your house. We have to get people back into this thing, building their own house. And also, the cost of a HCC house to the government has gone from $300,000 under PNM in 2010 to $1.3 million under UNC in 2015. Ain't making no sense. Which poor person could pay $1.3 million for a house? They can't. So what the government has been doing is trying to subsidize. It's very, very difficult. If you have to pay $1.3 million for a house, and you could only sell it for, say, $500,000 or $600,000. It's hard. So a number of people came to us and said, look, we could build a basic 3-bedroom house for $500,000. Give us the chance to do it. What the government has to do is to provide what is called a service lot with all infrastructure, road, water, electricity, drainage. Provide a service lot to these contractors and give them a standard 3-bedroom design, just about 1,000 square feet, 3-bedroom, 1 bathroom, and they can build it for $500,000. And we have a flood of contractors coming at us ready to do that. Basic, no-brainer, flat land, easy. That will start in this 2019, 2020, and to make it easy for small builders. Because we know that small builders have cash flow problems. So you'll get a significant advance payment to build the house, make it easy for you. In other words, you're not getting paid after you finish your house. That's the problem with small contractors. They have no cash. You get an advance payment, a substantial advance payment to get you moving and get you going. That's this PNM government getting the job done. So in this budget, we targeted specifically people at the lower end. We also targeted people at the upper end. One of the biggest problems for businessmen is something called VAT refunds. When we came in, the government was owing businesses $4.5 billion in VAT refunds. And a lot of businesses, small, medium, large, they need these refunds. They need it to grow their business, to pay their workers' salaries and so on. It was very hard for us to keep pace with these VAT refunds. Very, very difficult. Because every time you pay a VAT refund, that reduces the amount of money the government gets. And it reduces the amount of money available to pay salaries and so on. So we say, all right, we're going to give them bonds. Interest-bearing bonds, tradable on the stock market, and that will be launched within the next couple of weeks. The people in the Ministry of Finance have been working on a program, and those bonds will be launched within the next couple of weeks, and that will deal with this problem of VAT refunds. So at least we'll put some more money back into the system so people can invest and they can employ more people and so on. So when you listen to these characters, one set of old talk about how PNM don't know what they're doing. PNM never did anything. All a set of foolishness. Any of you all ever went to Tobago recently? I had the privilege to go to Tobago just a couple weeks ago. I traveled on the new ferry, the Jean de Valette. Any of you travel on that? I thought I was on a plane. It was so smooth. I reached in Tobago, I didn't even realize. Just in about 2 hours. In about 2 hours, we reached in Tobago, smooth, nice. The boat like a hotel. And you see that boat, the Jean de Valette, your Prime Minister, Dr. Rowley, went to Australia a couple years ago. He went to China and then he went to Australia. And he engaged in an arrangement with the government of Australia. There are 2 builders of fast ferries in Australia, world class. One is called Incat, one is called Austal. And we decided to buy 1 ferry from Incat, 1 ferry from Austal. And for any of you who have traveled to Tobago recently, on that boat, the Jean de Valette, let me tell you something. Those boats that are coming next year, that are being constructed now in Australia because of the foresight of this government, better than the Jean de Valette. You wait and see. Better than that. Better than that. And we're building a new airport in Tobago. They vex. The opposition vex. Well, we can take them on. And if you travel the length and breadth of this country, if you go down south, if you see the highway work that is taking place between San Fernando and Point 14, when we came in, we met that project, the San Fernando to Point 14 highway. Contractor was bankrupt, abandoned the project, everything in disarray. He ran away, owing workers 1 set of money. We came in, we were able to recover $1 billion in performance bonds. We had to fight it, we had to go to court all over the world and recover $1 billion, and we start back that highway construction. Go down south now and you'll see what's going on. Roads being built by this PNM administration. We are doing it. Go up in the east, you'll see what we're doing from Kamuto to Manzanilla. Soon we'll be going from Toko, from Grandi to Toko. Soon we'll be building a port in Toko. They don't want us to tell you that. They don't want to hear about the things that this PNM administration is doing. Right there in Curepe, Look at the interchange being built there, the flyover. No problem, no disruption of traffic, smooth construction. That is going to be open next year. We have 2 hospitals under construction, one in Point Fortin, one in Arima, nearly finished. We just turned the sod for another hospital in Grandi. They don't want you to hear that because we're getting the job done. They don't want to hear what we are doing. So we're not just rebuilding the economy, we're also dealing with the infrastructure needs, the healthcare needs of the people of this country. So I want to tell all of you PNM people, in terms of local government, we are the only party that has promised local government reform. The only party. One of the problems with local government is the councils don't have the authority to get the work done. They don't have the authority to award contracts. They don't have the authority to manage their own affairs. We are changing all of that. There's a bill, legislation before the parliament, which will be debated and passed. It was already, Minister Kazim Hussain already commenced the debate on that bill. It's before a committee, and that bill will soon be brought into fruition, that local government bill. And you know what that will do? Right now, councils have no control over where contractors come from. So you in Samoa, you see a project taking place, a local government project, a council project, you know where the contractor from? From Pinal. In Diego Martin, you see something happening, you know where the contractor from? Mayaro. That stupidness had to stop. And part of our local government reform is the contractors must come from inside the region, inside, so that the money remains inside and circulates for the benefit of the residents of that particular region. That is one of the more fundamental parts of local government reform. And we're giving the new council the authority to manage all of that, all in keeping with the new Public Procurement Act. And we're giving local government councils the responsibility to deal with school repairs, because it's part of your community, repairs of government buildings, all of these things your new councillors will have as we pass that legislation in the not too near distant future. Your councillors will have this authority. We are the only party talking about that. What them talking about? You heard Mr. Hines talk about Cambridge Analytica. You hear them say it's not true. Well, a damn lie. Go on the internet. I was sitting down right there, I use my phone and I Google Cambridge Analytica. One big article come up. They use that skullduggery that Mr. Hines talk about. They get your phone number. They get your Facebook details. They use that information on you. They went to TNTech. They went to WASA. They went to Digicel. They went to TSTT. They get the information on you. Remember during the last election, you're getting a call saying, this is Kamla Prasad Besesa. I will call you, and I want to know how she get my number. Because they use your information. They stole your information. They say not true. You go and check. The same Mr. Wiley that they spoke about, he went and he testified before a committee in the British House of Parliament. Just now I was showing Mr. Hines, the Securities Exchange Commission in the United States just fined Facebook $100 million for allowing Cambridge Analytica to steal people's Facebook information. And you know, with all that, they lose the election? As a joke of the whole thing, with all that stupidness they was doing, they lose the election. And they will lose this next one coming too. And you see our 14 standard bearers in Samuel Avantil, we have 14 winners who are going to take home all 14 seats in the Samuel Avantil Corporation. All 14 seats. All. We are the only party that has a plan for this country. We're the only party that could hold this country together. We're the only country that could build this country and make things easier for you and your children. If we listen to them, the opposition leader responded to my budget address. You know what she said? Let the exchange rate move in accordance with market forces. She think we're stupid? That means devalue the dollar. That is her economic plan. Send the dollar to 20 to 1 or 10 to 1. That is what them will do. She said it in the budget speech. She said, let interest rates rise. Let the dollar devalue. That was her response to our budget speech. That is what will happen to you if you're voting take God out of your thoughts and you're voting a UNC government. When we came in, as I said, I talk about two fellas, two junior ministers of finance, only parading up and down the country. They have some kind of political tabanka. Two misfits, two losers, political tabanka. But you know what the advice was? Devalue the dollar. As we come in, they tell us devalue the dollar. Send it to 10 to 1. That's the advice we get. We say, no, we're not doing that. Because as soon as we devalue the dollar, food prices will start to rise. The cost of living will start to rise, and poor people will suffer. We say, no, we ain't doing that. They say, you don't do that, your foreign exchange reserves will evaporate in 6 months, and you will have to call in the IMF. It has been 4 years, and our foreign exchange reserves are still 7.1 billion US dollars. And in fact, in the last 2 months, foreign exchange reserves went up by 200 million US dollars under the stewardship of this government. We still have 8 months of import cover. They say go last 6 months, well, it's 4 years and we still going strong. So we ain't bother with them. We decide we're not doing that. We're not devaluing the dollar. And that is why inflation has been kept at just 1% for the last 4 years, the lowest in the world. That's their advice to us. Devalue the dollar. Let interest rates rise. Well, we ain't doing that at all. We ain't doing that at all. They say cut expenditure to match your budget. In 2016, the government earned $36 billion. We spent about close to 50. So we had to go and borrow 14. They tell us cut expenditure to match your income. You know what that would mean? The budget for 2016. This is what the experts tell us to do. All these experts who's come out and be writing in the papers and talking on radio whole day, talking a set of damn nonsense. They tell us, cut your expenditure to match your income. You know what would have happened if we cut expenditure, government expenditure to 36 billion? 20,000 public servants would have go home. 20,000 public servants would have had to go home. Say we're not doing that. We're going to manage. If we have to borrow, we'll borrow, and we will stabilize, and then we get the economy to grow again. Say we're not doing that. And they're still talking that stupidness, you know. Up to today, I see some nonsense in the paper. They say cut expenditure to match income. Yes, and send home 10,000 people. We're not doing that. This PNM government ain't doing that. And we have been making our own decisions. Look at Petrotrin, for example. Petrotrin was losing $2 billion a year. They had a payment coming up this year, a bond maturing in August of this year for 6 billion Trinidad and Tobago dollars. Petrotrin couldn't pay. They didn't have the money. And the credit rating agencies were just waiting for Petrotrin to fail and default on that loan. And next thing, they downgrade our credit rating. They send us to junk bond. But let me tell you something. This government was able to refinance that $6 billion without a government guarantee. That wasn't easy. No government guarantee. It didn't increase the public debt. And we had to restructure Petrotrin. The refinery was really losing all the money. It was the refinery losing about $2 billion because of loans taken out in the past. I can tell you now confidently that Heritage Petroleum, which is the oil-producing arm of the new Petrotrin arrangement, is making a profit. In fact, for its first 9 months, Heritage Petroleum made a profit of over $500 million. That is from minus $2 billion to $500 million profit in just 9 months. And Barataria Trading, the other one that imports fuel, also made a handsome profit in those 9 months. So we have taken that company from losing $2 billion, from an almost certain default on a $6 billion loan, to a profitable company and a refinance loan. That is what your government has been able to do, getting the job done. And the sky is only the limit, because the OWTU formed a company called Patriotic. They put in a bid for the refinery, and we selected them as the preferred bidder because they were by far the best bidder. And I don't want to talk out of turn. We gave Petrochin a month to deal with some issues that the evaluation team is mainly public servants and experts, had some issues with how Patriotic was looking at how they will take over the refinery. So they asked them 10 questions. And I can report tonight that Patriotic has answered those 10 questions. And the cabinet will be making a decision on that in the very near future. If everything works according to plan, we're going to move the OWTU from a trade union to a commercial business company earning money for its members. Only PNM could do that. You think UNC could do that? You think UNC could build a new society like that? Taking a trade union from being workers to being owners of capital and generators of income? Only PNM could do that. Only we. And as Dr. Rowley said, he take all kind of insult from them. All kind of talk from them, talking about the trade union. He take all kind of buff from them, all kind of insult from them. But they put in the best bid. And we don't deal with things based on grievance or who insults you. They put in the best bid, and we are going to work with the oil field workers trade union to create that new system, that new refinery. So this is what your PNM government is doing. And this country's future is bright. And it is because this country's future is bright, you have these characters writing this stupidness in the papers about the Trinidad and Tobago economy. You have to have trust in your PNM government. Do you trust your PNM government? You must trust us. We've been able to weather the storm for the last 4 years. We have not retrenched a single public sector worker, not one. Nobody in the public service went home. If we had found ourselves in the hands of the IMF, I was looking at what was going on in Barbados. Barbados changed government. They had to call in the IMF because they had enough foreign exchange to last for about 3 weeks. 3 weeks. Whereas we have for 8 months, they had for 3 weeks. Had to call in the IMF. When you call in the IMF is the lender of last resort. You know, the first thing they do, they tell you how to cut your public service. First thing, they say you want money from us to meet your foreign exchange requirements, send home public servants. They had no choice. They sent home 1,500 public servants, and that is out of a total of 14,000. They sent home 10% of the public sector workforce in Barbados. If that was Trinidad, we would have to send home over almost 9,000 public sector workers. And that is what we have saved you from. So ignore these people and the damn nonsense. We know what we are doing. We have stabilized the economy. We have rescued this country from those brigands. We know exactly what we're doing. Just yesterday, I was honored to participate in a signing ceremony for a new industrial estate in Point Lisas that is going to create thousands of manufacturing jobs, create foreign exchange, earn foreign exchange for this country. That project will start in the next month and should be finished in 1 year. That's what this PNM government is doing. That's what we're doing. Those are the kind of things we're doing. So don't listen to them and the damn nonsense. We will win this local government election. Our standard bearers in Sabah-Lavaltille will be victorious. The PNM will be victorious. And you know why? Because great is the PNM. And the PNM is great. So I end this with the war cry. Great is the PNM. Great is the PNM. Great is the PNM. And we shall always prevail. Thank you.